live button, and normally there's about a 10-second lag, and there was none. So welcome, welcome, welcome. We have a fantastic show today. Matter of fact, this is the bane of my life. One Heller is enough for me usually, but today we all get double dose of Heller, but they're different. I think you guys aren't even in the same Heller family-ish thing. Is that even close, Johnny?
No, yeah, we're not. There's no relation. This, ladies and gentlemen, is my friend Brad Heller. No relationship except that he's lucky enough to have a cool last name.
Well, thank you guys for having me. I mean, I did a whole family research. We're not going to go through my ancestry for the next hour to see if we actually are related somewhere down the line. We could do that if you want.
You don't have any Irish or English in you, do you?
No, sir.
Yeah, that's your on my dad's side, Eastern European, and that's where Heller comes from. But the rest of me is all Irish and English. My mother's born in London, and before that, all a bunch of Irishmen.
Okay, so we're just from different parts of the universe. That's okay.
Yes. But we both enjoy really good cookies.
Really, really good cookies. We can discuss that too.
Well, and here's the most obnoxious thing. So now I have two Hellers on the show, and I went and did the internet research, which I do on our guests every time. So I kind of have a feel for, in case, hey, did I miss something? They've done something since the last time I saw them. And I search, and there's another Brad Heller out there. And now, normally when I search, I'm smart enough sort of to go, Brad Heller, narrator, hoping, because that usually narrows it right down if there was more than one Brad Heller in the world. That I expect. Yeah. I just don't expect two Brad Heller narrators. And so you don't go by Brad Heller. What do you go by in the professional world?
My full name is Bradley, so that's what I've been going by. I changed that on my SAG-AFTRA card several years ago because of the other Brad Heller, who was an acting coach and an actor. And I don't know, maybe somewhere down the line, Johnny, you're related to that Brad Heller. We have to dive into that research in another episode.
I didn't, I was, when I met you, I was depressed enough. I didn't search any further for, even worse Hellers, or even better Hellers. So there
are no better.
I wasn't the only one.
Let's be real. Let's set that in stone today. There are no better Hellers than the two that John is stuck with for the next 60 minutes.
And how did you two meet?
We met at a SAG-AFTRA audiobook workshop.
That's right.
On
as
Broadway.
A matter of fact, SAG-AFTRA in LA and in New York, SAG-AFTRA members in good standing who are reasonably knowledgeable can and probably should, in terms of karma, join the SAG-AFTRA conservatory and give workshops. And by the way, if you're SAG-AFTRA, you can attend casting things, meet directors, meet agents, meet producers, and you can learn from, let's say Don wants to give a workshop at SAG-AFTRA, if he's a SAG-AFTRA member, on Studio One or whatever. You can take that, and it's free. So I did one on audiobooks, and Brad Heller was there, which interested me, of course. We chatted amiably, and he turned out not to be as a horrible Heller as I. So we hit it off pretty well. And as a matter of fact, this Thursday, so 2 days from now, I'll be doing another.
You're going to be there again, right?
I'm going to be there this Thursday, yeah. So they sell out right away, but I'm telling you, it's I'd say there's 12 people in the room, maybe, give or take. But every time I've been to the casting sessions myself to try and, get a little more famous, or more money, preferably the latter. And it's a really good thing. There are opportunities to learn from so many people in our industry in so many ways. And this is just another one that I don't think enough union actors take advantage of. But, the SAG-AFTRA really, really works hard to try and be there for you.
And the voiceover lab in New York is great. It's really nice. It's really comfortable. You can also, I guess we're doing an ad here for the SAG-AFTRA Foundation, but just you can book time in the booth. I mean, the workshops with you and others, and not just audiobook and other genres. It's been really, so that's where we cross paths. And I made sure to track you down before you got out of there, because I didn't realize we were neighbors as well here on the Upper West Side. And
we've had lunch since. We've worked together since. Brad's coming to the New England Narrator Retreat, which we'll discuss toward the end again, but that's something you should all consider. Here's the thing, and we'll talk about how we all got Bradley Heller. There is another Brad Heller, which I thought was very funny that Don I called down this morning and said, all the stuff you wrote about Brad, it's not true. None of that is
No, no,
him.
no, no. You said it's all wrong. You didn't say
No,
it's not true. You just said you're an
I'm an
idiot. It's
idiot. It's
all
all wrong.
wrong.
Yes. No, it didn't attach to my Brad. This is my, but Brad and I have hit it off. We've met for lunch any number of times. He's a student of mine. And let's talk a little bit. We'll talk about a million things, but let's talk about your background in this. Is sports related, yes?
Yes, yes.
Let's talk about that.
I went to college for sports broadcasting, and that's I was
Specific. That was your major?
broadcast journalism at Syracuse, but the famed Newhouse School, which has produced all kinds of legendary sports broadcasters. So that was kind of what I thought my path was going to be, and I did it for almost 2 decades. Sports broadcasting here in New York City. I was WCBS 880, one of the legendary radio stations here. I was fortunate enough to be the morning sports anchor for a dozen years. And they sent me to the Super Bowl when the Giants were there. I mean, the World Series, and I got to do some pretty cool things with them. And then the New York Mets landed there. That was their flagship state. It still is, but landed there back in 2019. And I got to travel with the Mets and do some studio hosting and pregame and postgame and that sort of thing.
Wait. When you travel with the Mets, I mean, you travel on a plane with
I did, yes.
What was that like? Because everybody thinks these guys, they do it all the time. It's 3 and 4 day trips.
It doesn't suck.
Yes. So are you in first class?
The entire plane is pretty much what you would.
It's a Mets plane, kind of.
It's a charter plane. You're pretty much, the whole thing is first class. They stay in very nice hotels, and we as the broadcasters sit in the back, and they feed you a lot, and it's
Who pays your way? Did the Mets pay, or does your station pay?
I think it's a deal that the radio station kind of they pay for seats on the charter, and it's and things changed after COVID to where when I took over the role full time.
Yeah.
For a year, they ended up saying, "Oh, we don't need to travel the host." So I ended up doing a lot of those road games, the longer trips from my apartment. But I did get to experience a lot of the playing the rivals in Philadelphia, Atlanta.
Did you make any friends among the Met players, or do they like put their nose?
Yeah, and you know what? You're basically with them more than your family. I mean, not what I mean. If it's just home games too, I mean, you're in the clubhouse an hour before the game. You're in the clubhouse after the game. I've got to interview these guys, either it was on the field or in the clubhouse. So by the end, they do. It's like for a while there, it was like they might not have known my name, but they're like, "Oh wait, I know this guy." Hopefully this guy's not a jerk. But yeah, by the end, it was like, "Oh hey, Brad." I'm like, "Oh, they got my name right." So it's
Did you become friends with anybody, like, particularly?
Yeah, you know what? Brandon Nemo's a really good guy. I mean, Francisco Lindor and I, we talk tennis. He's a big tennis fan. So I remember at the end of the season, David Peterson, one of their starters, was his wife was due to give birth soon, and my wife was pregnant at the time. So we were talking about preparing for fatherhood. So when the season ended, he was like, "Hey, good luck with everything with the baby." So just some of those things, those conversations, you kind of look back on and be like, "Oh, that's pretty cool to kind of get to know those guys on a level beyond the field." So
anybody treat you like absolute crap?
Like
Don does that to a lot of people.
Well, I have not got the Don Baarns treatment. I was not. That was not even...
It's on the way, though. Don't you're still young.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. I await that day. No, for the most part, if the guys were just busy, they just kind of they didn't have time for it. But no one was ever. I didn't really have any kind of experiences like that. You hear stories. I've heard some of the players would kind of just mess around. If they liked you, they'd kind of mess around and kind of play some tricks on you. Whatever.
Yeah. Practical jokes like setting your car on fire, stuff like that. Yeah.
I did have Mariano Rivera when I was doing some work. I used to go every spring training to Yankee spring training. This was, when Rivera was still playing. And one of the things we had to do with my job at the time, it was, you're there for a week and just trying to get as many interviews and things you could just to help kind of preview the season. And for whatever reason, the job, my supervisor at the time called up and they said, "Hey, we need to do a favor. We need you to talk to some of these guys and get some preview interviews in Spanish for our Spanish affiliates. I'm like, well,
Do you speak Spanish?
I don't.
Oh,
I told her that. And she goes, you know what? She goes,
hola, Mariano.
they've done this
Wow.
before. They've done this before. You just go up and say, hey, if I ask you some questions in English, we're going to answer them in Spanish. And she's like, and lo and behold, she had never been to spring training. She's like, oh, they do it all the time. So, I mean, I grew up a Yankee fan. I'm not going to lie. So, I go to some of the players, some of the guys that, the fringe players that you weren't sure going to make the roster. And they did. Robinson Cano at the time, he did it. I was, this was like maybe my first spring training there. I'm like scared to death. So the last one I had to get, like I could not get Mariano Rivera.
What are you, like 22 years old or something?
I was, I was probably, I was for being a professional, I was probably older than I should be for being terrified to do this. But being this was my favorite team and these like my idols. So I go up to Mariano Rivera and I'm like probably already like, excuse me, Mariano, I'm like, would you, if I ask you some questions in English, would you mind answering in Spanish? And he looks at me, he goes, do you speak Spanish? I'm like, no, but I'm learning. I just was like fumbling for any words I could find. He's like, well, why don't, he's like, this is your job, right? How are you, what if I start cursing into the mic? How would you even know? I'm like, you're right. I wouldn't, but I trust that you would not do that. I don't even know what I'm saying. I'm just like, fumbling for words. And he's like, and I'm just standing there like the sweat's probably pouring down my face. And he gives this long pause and he goes, I'm just kidding, whatever you need. And I was just like, huh. And he did it. We spoke for a few minutes and I turned around and all the other reporters were like laughing at me because they know, I guess, that Mariano does that with the newbies. So, that was my story to tell. But, I just, to have some of those conversations was cool looking back. I mean, terrified at the time, but like, Mariano's as nice as they come, as I came to find out. So just like to have fun with me. So
great stories. Yeah, people are going to wonder, why did you leave the chance to talk to, Cano and Mariano Rivera and Brandon Nimmo? Why did you put all that behind you and move into the lucrative world of audiobook narration?
Lucrative, of talking to
Talking to yourself in a small room.
Small booths. Yeah. Well, the anyone who kind of pays attention to sports and sports media, it's like, my job was to do sports updates, and basically this day and age with smartphones, you were getting everything you needed. I'm sure you, Johnny, and if you're a sports fan, Don, I know with Donnie, you get everything you need on your phone. So my job was kind of like, I was becoming a dinosaur. And not only that, the radio station I worked for, this, legendary station, WCBS 880, like closed its doors. They like turned off the lights last summer. So my position was eliminated. This was 3 years ago now. And I basically got a 1.5 year head start on my friends, essentially. So that kind of forced me to change gears. And, I could not lucked into the baseball work, but like, I wasn't, everybody that works in baseball kind of comes up through the minor leagues, almost just like the players do. So I kind of was fortunate to be in that position. And Ed Coleman was the longtime radio voice, not radio voice, but he worked with the Mets for a long time. And I filled in for him and then took over his role after he retired in 2022. And they ended up, going, we're going to bring in minor leaguers and go cheaper and guys that have eat, sleep, breathe baseball. And that wasn't me. So I think from an experience standpoint, I think they went a different direction and just kind of seeing where the business was going and my experience. I still do some sports broadcasting work. Westwood One broadcast NFL games, college basketball, college football, on radio and on affiliates and on apps. So I'm involved with that, doing studio work, pregame, halftime, postgame. And I'm very busy during March Madness, but I took a step back, and I had thought about voiceover pre-pandemic, but this kind of allowed me back in 2022 to dive in more full time. And I work with someone at the radio station, one of the producers there and the writers, who's been doing this on the Spanish side for a long time. So he kind of introduced me to that world, audiobooks and everything, and got me in with the Library of Congress. And I did an audition.
The fellow is Manny, right?
It was my friend is Martin Untroy, but he works with Manny Herrera a lot, and Lou Gutierrez and Evan Cassidy over at Index Audio. And I did an audition there a little over 2 years ago, and really with not having, other than because all my voiceover coaching and things was all geared toward commercial. So audiobook was kind of a new realm for me. And I just kind of dove in, and those guys took a chance on me. And here we are 2 years later, and I've, approaching 20 books for them. And that's, that kind of got me started with coaching and workshops. And that's where, Johnny, you and I first crossed paths last year at SAG-AFTRA.
Let's tell our viewers a little bit about the Library of Congress gig and what it is and how it differs from the commercial recording of audiobooks, not in the negative sense, but in the general sense. So the Library of Congress, every single book ever done goes
has
there.
to be
Yes.
has to be an audio form for the blind. And so it's funny, like the first, like I've gotten all different types of genres, and it just, I'm not even sure how the shipment, they get shipments every couple weeks, and the books are assigned, and I've done everything from, thrillers to politics to science. It just, sports. I just did a
Is the
baseball book
process any
recently.
different for you? Here's the Library of Congress. I'm coming out with oh gosh, I don't the latest Lee Child, whatever, or the latest anything. Is there any difference to how you prepare it or perform it in Library of Congress versus what you do if it was out from Macmillan or Harper or Don Baarns Productions?
The biggest difference is that you're responsible for captions to photographs, all the notations, and the bibliography at
Really?
the end. So you get some of these nonfiction books where there's, 10, 15 pages of bibliography. Like, it all has to be done, for
Now, how do you do a photo? If there's a photo and it says, or what if it's one of those like a math kind of thing with all that? If you move triangle A,
and this is where the producers come in, where they try and sum it up for you, where you can
say it,
best
yeah, nutshell.
describe what is happening. Like, the current book I'm doing is about kind of the history of all the gangsters in New York City.
Ooh,
And some of the pictures
what's the
are,
name of that book?
it's Gangsterland. And it's
Is that by John Knoll?
no,
Trying to think
David Petruccia.
I think I know this book. Yeah, it's
He did a book on Arnold Rothstein. He did the bio on Arnold Rothstein, and this is about Rothstein and all of his
yeah, it
henchmen.
sounds
And
great.
yeah, it's really, and the way it's told, it's instead of just kind of in the, familiar telling of a story chronologically, it's actually done by location. So if, like, you were to do a walking tour in the early 1900s,
Yeah.
it basically, like, every building and every restaurant, every bar, every cabaret, every theater is its own section. And the pictures are mixed in through all of these descriptions. So there'll be some great stories, and then you'll kind of have caption to photograph, and it might be like an headline from a newspaper, and you have to, like, read the article or give the ad. It's an advertisement for a show, the Ziegfeld Follies or something at the Schubert Theater, whatever it might be. I was just narrating this morning that you just have to kind of describe read as best you can, whatever the advertisement is.
So if it's I can't remember the guy who got killed in front of Sparks Steakhouse and the guy Gotti hit. So let's say whoever it is, I can't remember. It's one of the Luke Chase. I can't remember.
Yeah, there's like hundreds and hundreds
so
of names.
he's laying in a pile of blood on the street in front of the steakhouse. Do you describe the picture? Like, here's like in this frame, Calvin's leaning over Hobbes's bloodied body, and I mean, and then there's a caption. Or how's that work?
For the most of those, it's just whatever the caption to photograph is. So, Lucky
No description
Luciano.
of the photo.
There are captions of the photographs given. If there's no caption, then, like, if there's an advertisement or an article, it's basically like, do your best to read. If it's just the headline of the article or
Wow.
whatever it might be. When you get into, like, tables, I did a book on misinformation and how your brain processes misinformation, and that was dozens and dozens of tables and charts. And you just kind of have to, if it's a chart, you just kind of read it. If it's a table, you just read it, column, and you just would read it as best you can to just to give the listener enough of an idea of what's happening. And if it's a chart with all these kind of bubbles and lines and things, the producer then kind of writes up a little short thing to help you, hopefully.
I know if you have to work with Lou and Evan over there at Index, and they get the book. So what kind of a turnaround? Did they give you enough time to prep it and do it, or?
Yeah,
Is there a push?
I mean, I've been fortunate lately where I've been a good run with them where I'll get the next book while I'm still doing the current book. Now that they've hopefully have some trust in me that I'm going to do a decent job for them. So, I mean, I've kind of been in the situation now where I'm not narrating every day. I mean, I'm going to start to because thankfully projects are starting to line up and to have another one on the calendar when this one is done. It's a decent. It's not, they give you, I want to say, a month,
Yeah.
to get some of these done. So it's not a mad scramble, but I try and, certainly, as you know, being in the booth, getting them done, it's a chance to move on to the next one. So unless there's another project or something going on, if I have a broadcast or whatever it might be, then maybe I'll space it out a little bit. But if like this week, I'm narrating 3 days, and I'll start something new next week, and then just now that there's not if there's other projects going on, then maybe I'll space it out. But if this is what I have and this is the priority, then I'll knock it out every day if I need to. So
When you started in the Library of Congress, and you've been doing it for a while now, at
a little
what
over
point
2 years, yeah.
at what point did you say, I need to, I don't want to discuss salaries, but I know it doesn't pay as much as other union gigs for the work because of the nature. It's the deal they have with SAG-AFTRA for because you're doing stuff for the blind, and so it's not as much money, you guys in the audience, as you may as you may think, but it's consistent and it does insurance, it does things, and so Brad wanted to branch out. At what point did you say, "Hey, geez, I need to get oh better training, better opportunities, et cetera, et cetera"? Was that your thinking? Because this is a Don Baarns kind of question.
Yeah, well, I mean, after the first book, which was kind of dove into the conspiracy theory on the JFK assassination, which was 2 summers ago. I mean, I was thankful that like I didn't have any experience narrating, and I went in and did an audition, and it was a month later where they gave me the first book, and I'm sitting down, and this is a 550-page book, and I'm just like my head is spinning between and you factor in like all the research you have to do because you're responsible for looking up all the names, and you get a nonfiction book and like this gangster book now. I mean, between names and places, like I'm living on the some of these websites that help you
Yeah.
figure out pronunciations. So just to get a better feel for, all right, like what am I doing here? And but then also too, like you start to add up. I mean, it's a if it's a 2-to-1, not the first book, but the ratio of recording to finished hours, and then you add up all the prep time. And I mean, full disclosure, I'm a slow reader, so you get slow reading times slow narrating, and you compute all that together. You're like, oh, this is this is what the finished
Yeah.
number is.
McDonald's is hiring. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So that was one thing. And then if you're starting to do it, and you're like, and if you get a good book, and you're just like, oh, I'm enjoying this. So like, how can I get better at it? And Johnny, we have a mutual friend in Rich Larkin, who I got to know from the broadcast side of SAG-AFTRA, who helped me with any kind of conversations, contractual, my severance, all that stuff on the broadcast side. He oversees the audiobook division, with Jane Love. They both they work together to kind of to oversee it all. So he was the one who mentioned you, and when I told him I was doing these audiobooks, he was the first one to say, he said, hey, he goes, broadcasting's different. He's one that knows because he works in both areas.
Yeah.
And he said, hey, don't, if you're really going to pursue this, get coaching. Don't put together a demo if you're not ready, and you're only going to get one shot with some of these publishers. So he really encouraged me to reach out to you, Sean Pratt, and to start there. And so that's kind of where I started. I reached out to Sean. We had a conversation. We met in person at that SAG-AFTRA workshop, and just to because coming from the world of broadcasting, like all those skills, it's the complete opposite. I'm talking loud stadiums, and energy means volume, and this is like the complete
It's
opposite.
chapter 1, folks. Here we are for chapter 1.
And the Yankees beat the Mets, and it's like, no, why are you yelling at me? Like, this is an audiobook. Like, oh, right, sorry, So
And that's the end. That's a wrap on this story.
chapter 1, it's like, stop yelling at me. So that was kind of a rude awakening, and it certainly was a wake up call, because as I was pursuing some voiceover coaching while I was doing the job full time. Now it all made sense when I stopped doing it every day. It's like, oh, this is all, and which were may have been good habits for broadcasting, were the complete opposite for this. So it really took months and months of being like, just relax and lower the bot, so that,
We
yeah, that's where it started. And then working with you and really just the technique and all that stuff, and just to get to a comfort level, because I think you're doing this, and those Library of Congress projects don't appear on Audible, and not that I would want to listen to myself for 10 hours, but they can't even send me the link. They can send me excerpts, but if I wanted to listen to myself, or if I got, going to APAC for the first time, and producers and say, oh, where can I hear your stuff? And I'm just like, you can't hear my stuff, So,
how do
um,
people get the books from by the way, so Chris happened to ask a question. We were already on that topic
Already on it.
of
Yeah.
what habits did you have to unlearn when you transitioned from broadcasting to narration? And certainly, since my son's a sports broadcaster,
Donnie Donnie
Yeah.
would know for sure.
so
Yeah.
they're used to having background noise. I mean, they have a microphone out to make sure they pick up the crowd noise, which is
And
a
you're
little bit,
talking over the crowd, and
yeah.
it's,
And you want to be hyper excited because you're assuming people can't see sometimes, depending on which medium you're in, and so that's obviously different. What took you a while to kind of approach it differently?
that was the main thing. And also too, like, and maybe it was my Syracuse education, but you just develop this like broadcaster voice, Brad Heller live at Yankee Stadium. It's like, that's, and so many people would say to me like, oh, you don't sound like you do on the radio. I'm like, I want to sound like I do on the radio. Like, and that too was like just losing that. I don't know what that was. You're almost like putting on a mask and becoming broadcaster guy. And I think,
Yeah.
that's like, if you think of like how Will Ferrell did Anchorman, just that like persona you take on of
Which
being
is still
broadcaster guy, and sports broadcaster guy is different. And I can, that was kind of the running joke with our, friends in college at the time, and even the ones that still do it. They do sound just, it's a different vibe, and I think that's being away from it on a daily basis. Just hopefully trying to lose it, and is,
Do you guys ever watch the old SCTV, which I think is just the funniest thing that's ever been on? It's funny, Saturday Night Live. SCTV out of Canada, John Candy in those days.
yeah.
Rick Moranis did a character all the time he was a voiceover guy. And he'd walk in the studio, hey, no, buy 2 for 3. And he'd talk like this, and he'd walk in, no, and he'd hit a button, and he'd do this voice, and then he goes, anyway, and he'd come back out. And
It's a lot of Bill Hader's characters when he's like the game show host,
yes.
on SNL. And it's like I didn't know I was doing it, and just trying to shake, because I work with so many people who's like, oh man, it's like you sound exactly the same, and just it's so easy breezy. And for whatever reason, it was something I never was really able to shake. And then maybe not doing it full time anymore, I just was able to, because it's, broadcasting is one thing, but narrating, you're telling the story.
It brings up an interesting backstory, because all of us came from wherever we came from. And to be honest, when you and I began working together, I feared having to deal with you bringing your sportscaster
Yeah.
vibe and style to genres and to a medium that doesn't, because we all know, we talk about it all the time, but you don't really think how sensitive it is. And Chris Walsh's question is perfect for it. The idea that, I do commercials, and I do Apple News, and I do audiobooks, and I'm telling you, e-learning is a different way to work than audiobooks. And it's a different way to work than commercials. And on-camera commercials are different than voiceover commercials. And everything's a little bit different. And until you dip your toes in and realize, that Brad Heller here at Yankee Stadium, that guy's not going to play unless he's not going to play in every genre. And you have to, part of the actor's ability, because actors want to do everything. And the idea that you can act doesn't necessarily mean you can sing and dance as well. But if you can, you want to do it all. And
By the way, I forgot to plug. So I know this is live, so that's, it's great. It's live. I forgot to plug in my computer. So before I lose you guys, I'm just going to plug in.
Oh, you're going to lose your power?
Would be important. I raced home from narrating to connect with Don, and I forgot to plug in my laptop. So bear with me 1 second. I'm sorry.
And Don, and when he gets that done, if you have any comments, because I feel like I know I am running off the mouth here. I want you to jump in.
No, you know me. I'm so shy.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, and but the funny thing is I see this whole so talking to Brad is like talking to my son, who is still a
Yeah.
sports broadcaster, but he also and he did a few audiobooks. He's done a half dozen or a dozen audiobooks when he started. Matter of fact, he's the only reason I'm in audiobooks and voiceover stuff is because of my son, and he's still doing sports broadcasting, and he has his. I hear him, it's like, oh, okay, he's in
Yeah.
his broadcaster mode right now, and uh, that's it's a character on one hand that when he walks in, that's his character, and but he gets to be it the whole time. Plus, you're doing live, real time, where you don't know where it's going to go. At least as a narrator, you actually, hopefully, you've done some prep and you have an idea of this character and you know their backstory. It's just a different character, and everyone's done it. Plus, you're sitting and you're talking 6 inches away from a mic to somebody who's listening to you for the story. They don't care about all this other stuff. I mean, different genre. Where do you see yourself? Are you going to do more commercial stuff, or you do more with publishers? Where do you see it going in the next year or three?
I've with Johnny's help for sure. I've really been pushing to kind of to get into that world of commercial audiobooks. Being at APAC for the first time in the spring, it was here in New York City. It was reason not to go, and just getting a chance to meet everybody. And with Johnny's help, it's getting some demos together. Like I said, people can't hear the books; they aren't on Audible. But I've tried to develop a decent amount of demos in different genres just to give people an idea of what I can sound like. And that's what I've been pushing for now. It's funny, I didn't realize, and you're so naive when you enter this world, working with a coach pre-pandemic for commercials, and it's like, oh, commercials and audiobook, and you start to learn all the different genres in voiceover. It's like audiobook could not be any different. It's like a different building on campus. If voiceover was a university, like audiobooks is its own, this, Johnny, it's its own building on campus, like down the hill and off to the side. It's not that the skills don't translate, but like how you go about putting together demos and marketing, it's just a totally different world. So
Yeah.
I've done a lot of work with commercials, and I have a commercial demo, and marketing that is so different from the. It's just like it's two different spreadsheets. It's just two different lists of people, and I think audiobooks is. I had a coach say, it's like you got to ride the horse in the direction it's going, and it's like, well, audiobooks is where the momentum is, and I'm leaning into that right now, and I've connected with Spotify, and hopefully there's a project we're discussing, which would be my first opportunity outside the Library of Congress, which I'm really excited about. If this gets going, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. But that's kind of where I'm going right now. And obviously commercials is something with this commercial demo that I invested a lot into, trying to also put that out to people in the right places and see what that turns into. So it's the marketing is like a whole different.
Let me ask you this about that, because I started when I started my career, audiobooks, I don't think were there. I mean, I preceded them. I mean, the same way the internet was barely there. Hell, we
And dirt was
only
barely
just
there,
discovered
right?
horses. So, yeah. So so you know what commercials are like, both voiceover and on camera. You get to learn it, and as you work, you learn. You work, you learn. Then you get in the audio. But now here you are forging ahead in an audiobook career and still forging ahead in a commercial career. Do you find these two button heads? Is it affecting your time? Can you give the time you need to market them both well, or are you having a hard time doing half-ass on both or full
Yeah,
ass on both?
you kind of said it. I mean, there are days where I feel like I am spreading myself thin, especially on days like today where I'm narrating, a 4-hour session in the morning. I mean, I have a 2-year-old, so
Oh,
then
they don't
the
take
dad
time.
dad responsibilities take over a lot in the afternoon. So then
Yeah.
it's he goes to bed, you have dinner, sit down. It's like, oh well, it's time to look, freshen up on the pages. If I'm narrating tomorrow, what's next? And then you realize, a couple of days have gone by, and it's like, oh well, there's the marketing aspect too, not just of audiobook, but also auditions if there are any, and then the commercial side. So yeah, there are definitely I have plenty.
Adulthood really sucks, doesn't it?
Yeah.
there are definitely days where I think I maybe need to pull back a little bit, but it's like you have this commercial demo invested in it, all the audiobook
Yeah.
demos and trying to reach out to people. So it's, yeah, I'm trying to make it all happen, and it's certainly not all going to happen at once. So that's kind of the how to best budget my time, the accountability, all that kind of thing to make sure you're doing everything you can when you know what, and it also might be accountable to say, it's just not all possible right now.
Yeah.
So um,
Hey,
it's a
that's a
good
great point, Brad. Seriously, because if you find yourself that you can't, because after a while, it's just you put so much out to the universe and it doesn't come back when you want or when you need. Because I've mentioned a number of times, our work is not determined by our need for it as much as who's going to hire us when they need us, and we have
Yeah.
no control over that.
Yeah.
But when you're out there marketing and doing your thing, you have to understand that sometimes you need to pull back a little bit. You need to keep your mental, emotional, and spiritual health together. And sometimes that can be direct, a resistance to these efforts to work. Because if you don't return, I don't know what you're like, but you keep giving, and never get. And after a while, it's irksome, burdensome, and hurts your soul. So you got to take different paths and different, you got to understand that you've got to keep your shit together.
And it's, and that's a real good lesson now, especially because, there's the summertime, there's family vacations, and, all I want to do is like put the pedal to the metal. And it's like, I can't, I got to send more emails. I got to send follow-ups. There's this audition I got to do. And whatever it might be. And I think it can be hard to say, you know what, like, it's okay to pull back a little bit, or maybe just spend an hour doing stuff instead of 3 hours. And because you don't, there's, and I know this business is not on anybody's timeline, but I think, it's, everybody's got their family situations and financial stuff, and you want to make things happen. But obviously you got to have the patience too. And there's that balance of doing too much and where, spreading yourself too thin with the different voiceover genres, but also like not putting your eggs in one basket. And I know anybody you talk to, whether it's marketing coaches, friends, mentors, whatever, might have something different to say. And it's about taking what everyone has to say and that guidance, but also what works best for you. And that's
Don, what's Chris's second question that's up there now? I can't read it.
So you mentioned you're a slow reader, which, hey, join the club. Do you track your words per minute? Also, do you track your hours on a project? I mean, this is a fascinating thing. Everyone's so different about this. Some people are just hyperactive and they're tracking everything on spreadsheets, and they know that a 500-page book, it took them, 3 weeks, and they spent X number of hours a day. Are you that type, or are you a little like, okay, I'm just working the most I can for a day? How do you go about your project management?
I will be as the projects start hopefully lining up, and I know as audiobook narrators, once you really get out there and people know who you are, and you can have multiple, as Johnny knows, and somewhat of his stature in this world, you get projects lined up weeks, months, whatever it is in advance. Then you kind of have to know what your pacing is and how to be able to do the scheduling. And I'm getting to that point now, fortunate enough to have, working on a book and then another one coming up. So it's getting a better feel for what my timing is. I mean, I've been pretty much recording wise, it's been the 2-to-1 ratio for me, 2 hours recording for 1 finished hour, and kind of using that as a guideline, then being able to, because I haven't, for whatever reason, there's never really been a 4 or 5 day week of narrating for me. Because of other responsibilities and whatever, multiple things going on. I also, because of timelines, but now with multiple projects lining up, which is I'm thankful to have that I'll need to be better about and coming up with a schedule to figure out what I need to do and how long it'll take.
You mentioned this morning you were recording, but were you recording at home in your booth, or you were recording someplace else?
The benefit, as we talked about the Library of Congress, the benefit of that is the company Index Audio has a bunch of studios in Midtown Manhattan, actually right above the theater where George Clooney did his show, which just wrapped up. So
that's right next door to that singing waiter place. What's that called?
Yes, it's on that block. Yes.
Yeah.
Gosh, I'm drawing a
53rd,
Stardust Diner, is that it?
Yeah, Stardust Diner. Well,
It's
waiter,
it's on that block. It's right
here's
above
your
that.
hamburger.
So
He's
you're
like,
going in, so when you're doing Library of Congress, are you usually going into those studios or are you
Yeah,
working at home?
I'm going in there, and it's 4-hour sessions, and and that's the good thing about the Library of Congress is while the rate is lower than it would be at the commercial level, and if you were doing ACX or those types of projects, like I go in, I do self-recording, and then I go home.
Yeah.
And then the project's done, and then a few weeks later, they send me the email, and I go in to do the pickups. So I really, a lot of people get started with ACX, and those projects obviously do end up on Audible, and that's I've taken a different path just kind of by chance. And while I don't have to worry about editing or the post production, the
Yeah.
downside is that I finish the project, and then it's like,
And so our audience knows the books that Brad does there for the Library of Congress are not commercially released. It's a different animal. It's another subsection of our world. It's great work and important work, but it's not as lucrative for the people who run it, the people who do it, etc. But it's something that needs to be done. And the fact that it's a union job. I mean, there's some benefits to it, but it is not commercial released, which affects everything. The books that I do and Chris Walsh does it and whoever else out there in the world and Brad does it, other people, those are commercial releases, and it's different money. That's why what Brad does is not going to be a royalty share, because it's going to go to the Library of Congress and be released in audio to visually handicapped people, unless of course the administration stops helping blind people too, because that's the kind of people they are. Not to be political, but boy,
another podcast for another day, right?
Yeah. I'll start that tomorrow. That's what I'm going to call it. Okay.
You're going to call it, I'll start that tomorrow?
That's right.
That would be a good name for a podcast.
Ask me anything but.
Yeah. Don't ask me about this, because I will go on forever.
And then but that other than demo material that you don't have, oh, by the way, do they care if you use snippets of it for your own stuff?
I mean, when I first started, and this is how little I knew, it was like, I would say, hey, can you send me excerpts of, and they'll gladly send me, I'd send them the page numbers and whatever the sections, and they'll gladly send it to me. But, working with Johnny, it's like, okay, find the sections you like, and I'm going to redo those for demos, which,
right.
I mean,
people don't understand that we should talk about that. But people don't understand that for demos. Like originally they think, well, I got to do something that I already did and take that out of there, and I'll grab this little section. And it's like, well, you can do that. That works fine. But you also can rewrite the script slightly if you choose to. No one's reading this script when they're hearing your demo. They don't know what the original one says, unless it was Luke, my father. I mean, all that, unless it's something famous, which you should not do for a demo anyway. You should be rewriting it, and you should be reperforming it for your demos, but people think they have to use what they already have, which does work. But boy, so you now are re-recording the little, besides it's a 10-minute thing, right?
Yeah. And also too, to show off different dialects. I mean, Johnny, you and I worked on, we did a Southern dial, because that's some of the feedback, just to show range, and just to, whether it's dialogue or different dialects or different genres, and and that, because I haven't done, to show different types of nonfiction or different fiction, because most of the books have been nonfiction through the Library of Congress. I have done some fiction, but to be able to find, also you want to find a a 90-second, 2-minute blurb that is entertaining, and it's.
Well, you found a very funny one. I remember. I like that one.
That was a fun one, and thank you again for helping to polish it up. So that was a fun one.
And why in the world, since you've worked with a mic for whatever 10, 15, 20 years, why did you go to a coach? That's a waste.
Why?
And then,
since I know your coach, I could say that.
Know your coach.
No. What was? I mean, why in the world? What made you after you crossed paths with Johnny? What was the reason for? But remember, if someone's starting, or even if they're in the mid part, people think they don't need a coach. Why in the world would you waste that money?
I mean, I mean, I suffer from imposter syndrome for sure, and that was even in the world of broadcasting, where I've been doing some of that stuff for close to 2 decades. So starting in a new world of audiobook narration, and having someone like a Rich Larkin who works at SAG-AFTRA, and being someone that I could talk to, and he, lends me his ear, and he was pretty straightforward. They're like, hey, just because you're talking in front of a microphone doesn't mean that you can, narrate audiobooks. Like, make sure. He was big on the coaching, and I knew, like, yeah, I mean, I did a lot of reading scripts and writing scripts and reading them in the broadcast world, but it's, nothing like what audiobook narration is. So I certainly wasn't gonna. And I was glad the Library of Congress took a chance on me without much experience at all. So I mean, the least I could do is take that opportunity and just try and get better. And look, you do something enough, you're gonna get better at it. But I didn't want to just keep narrating audiobooks, and without coaching, I'd be making the same mistakes. I want to be yelling in people's ears, and also slowing down, and all those things. And you're not just you're sharing a story. You're not just kind of reading words off of paper, which a lot of times in broadcasting, that's kind of what you're doing. I mean, you're telling a story, but you're not telling it in the same way. So
I also think one of the biggest things about coaches are you don't know what you don't know until you start talking
exactly,
to,
yeah,
you know,
that's exactly what it is.
and it's definitely one of those issues that there are things that a good coach, somebody who's been doing it a while, has insights, and they don't talk about them generally, or they might, but some of it doesn't apply to me. Some of it does apply to me. And a better coach will figure out, yeah, Don needs these 3 things. If he just quit doing all that other stuff and focus on these 2 things, he'd be a world better. And instead of telling me 25 things like we would talk about in general, we have general principles, and some of those apply to me and some of them really don't apply to me because of my background. I assume it's similar for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just even the technique standpoint in marketing, but it's also working with you, Don, on the jump start. I mean, I consider myself fairly not even savvy, but just I had to do a lot of editing and recording things on my own on the road for a lot of the broadcasting stuff. But walking into Punch and Roll, I mean, they use Pro Tools at the audiobook studios, but I don't have a Mac, so I needed my Adobe Audition from 1998 that I bought on eBay doesn't have the capability to do Punch and Roll. So at Johnny's suggestion, we connected, and I got on the Jumpstart bandwagon with Studio One. And so for any kind of audiobook stuff and Punch and Roll, that's been, and just even learning little things about mic placement, and like you said, you don't know what you don't know. And I'm
Yeah.
all these years just put on a headset with a mic attached to it and just started talking. And now all that stuff matters way more now. So
I find it fascinating. Here's another question. Here's Dan. I can't read Dan Weiss, I think. Why coaching now? He asked. And as we, the questions are coming up, they're absolutely coinciding with what we're talking about at the moment. So Brad's talking about why he's coaching now. Why we're all coaching all the time.
I'm not going to stop. But then I think there's the other part of it too, which I saw somewhere, I forget where, that coaching and education can also be a form of procrastination. So it's you get the coaching, but also at some point you got to take a shot. You got to put yourself out there. So
Right.
there's the other end of it. Like, the coaching is never going to stop for me. I mean, I'm going to the New England Narrator Retreat in October. Looking forward to that. And
I don't think the coaches themselves ever really stop. They're good ones. Don't stop. I was out the other day with Paula Parker, Paul Rubin, Joanna Adam Barr, and Barbara Rosenblatt. So all these gifted people, different, and talked about, and a lot of discussion with acting and what we like, what we don't like, and what's going on and what we think. And it was fascinating because you hear different people appreciate different things in different ways. And everybody has every single one of those people at that event could do the same book. The story, the author's truth would be out there, but the experience of the book would be different for each actor based on their training, because the author's words filter through everything we have. So when Brad Heller does a story, and Johnny Heller does a story, and Don Baarns does a story, they may be wonderful, but they're all still going to be different, even though it's the same story. And I find that endlessly fascinating.
And even just listening to experiencing different narrators on Audible or whatever it may be. Yeah, just how everybody tells a story. And I
Yeah.
think there's no, and I'm only been doing this for a little over 2 years. So you talk about, you don't know what you don't know. That I probably, what I don't know is still a very, very long list. So the coaching for me is not going to stop, especially as I hopefully make that leap into the.
For a lot of our viewers and listeners now, and later on YouTube, stories like yours and interviews like with people like you is important, because I want to bring on people who've done 50 years and I want to bring on people who've done 2 books and 200 books, because it's all different and everybody's experience is valid. I mean, I know you and we all know people who have tried to do what we're doing and have left the business, or were successful and left for whatever reason. I always find that interesting. I have a lot of respect for people who left the entertainment. I mean, I spent 20, 30 years trying to become an overnight success. So it's all that time you put in. And, would I have been happier? Because I was a newspaper reporter.
I didn't know that. I didn't know the newspaper reporter part.
Yeah, so that's right. That's the only other job I had that I actually liked. So now where would I be if I'd stuck with that? Probably imprisoned in some place by now. Yeah.
I mean, I have a master's in teaching math from middle and high school. So there's
in math, really?
Yeah, there's an alternate world where I have the summer off after, the New York State Regents exams and, geometry and algebra. So.
You want to are you a go-to guy if somebody has, because a lot of books have math formulas with letters Y and R and Z and shit, and no one knows how to say those. Do you know how to say those things?
I do. I mean, if we're getting into like calculus, I might struggle, but it's funny at APAC when I was meeting a bunch of the producers and the publishers, one of them, I'm not even sure how it came up. I just kind of offhanded made some reference to my teaching degree, and she stopped me. She goes, "Lead with that."
Yes, that
you need to lead with that. I said, "Okay, yes, please."
It needs to be on your website, and I didn't know this, and you need a demo that illustrates that you can do formulaic stuff and make it sound like you know what you're talking about. No one knows how to do. I think I told you I've done all these science books on human genomes. I've done 3 or 4 of them. Little long. I don't know what a genome is. I don't care. But it sounds like I do. But I don't know how to say formulas. If you know how to do that there's work. If you want to get paid to do that, there's work in those. There's a lot of books that have that, and I don't know how to do it.
That's a great point. And getting a demo of some kind in that from that like that. But it was also not even that. It was even another producer was like, "Wait, you're a sports guy? You can pronounce all those names, like all those names that nobody can pronounce?" I'm like, "Yeah, I can." Yeah, for the most part, depending on what depending on
that's a tough
that's
thing.
Another. They're like, "Okay, we'll call you the next time we know." It's like, great, please do.
Because I play baseball all the time, and I'm a fantasy baseball team, and all that stuff. So I got the book The Last Manager, which was a great book, for the Baltimore Orioles, and it was, but I knew everybody's name, and that was a huge help, because you get if you do a book on the War of 1812 and you don't know the names of the generals or something or anything, it's tricky. But if you have that, any specific small genre knowledge you have should be mentioned somewhere. I know that if you fill out the Ahab talent thing, what am I saying? The portal,
the bio.
You should in your bio should be your math expertise and your sports expertise.
Well, it's funny because, and that's kind of, when I first started exploring voiceover, especially on the commercial side, being a broadcaster was not what they wanted, because you think about all the specs, not announcery. We don't want an announcer. And it was like, so
and then they hired the announcer anyway.
I was running from my broadcast background for stuff like that, and especially in commercial. But then you come back to audiobook and it's like, oh wait, if you have a niche, that you can lean into.
Yeah.
Then so it's like, bringing it back again. So it's in one way I was like, I'm not a broadcaster. No way. If you're taking acting classes, you don't want to. No. Like, but then you're like, oh wait, that stuff's important now bring it back again.
Highlighting stuff like that's very important. Like, you don't want to highlight that you're a kleptomaniac or something like that. They want to keep that under wraps.
Right. That's on the
But
page of my website. You can't see. That's the hidden part.
Are you
they'll know when you
considering
visit their office.
are you considering or have you taken any acting classes?
I did. There's a theater company here in Manhattan, the Barrow Group, that I kind of discovered randomly maybe 10 years ago. It's near Madison Square Garden in Penn Station, and I've been taking classes off and on with them for more than a decade. And when my job situation changed 2 summers ago, the first thing I had done was literally like signed up for their summer program. And it's a very I've always been interested. I've taken improv classes at UCB, and I've always been intrigued by that whole world. And I was looking for something, and this was before the audiobook stuff happened, because I just loved that environment and just kind of the way they teach and their techniques and their principles. But I've always had that maybe like inner dream of doing stuff on stage, improv, and it just wasn't. I didn't want to find a way of teaching that was like breaking it down, and I just wanted to do it and have fun, not like be stressed about it. And this kind of was a very real life practical approach. So I've always leaned into some of the stuff they do, and I would take a class again and I look forward to it when I can do that again. So that's kind of my background in the acting side of things. And I'd love to explore. I've explored on camera commercials, and there's a comedy improv to that part as well, which I think is awesome. So.
I can't believe we've raced through. There's a couple things to bring up for everybody. Mm-hmm. Brad, do you have anything you want to tell us about? Any promo stuff? Any marketing things? Anything we need to know?
I mean, just this is a great. I appreciate you guys having me on. This is just an opportunity to, as I put it, this Brad Heller, to be, just to talk about this world, and everybody's been so supportive, and especially audiobooks. So I'm enjoying meeting people, and just any chance I get to talk about it with you guys, and to just make it known that I'm enjoying doing this and looking to do more. So that's really great. What I'm excited about. So
I'll say from personal knowledge, you're a delightful human being, and it's a pleasure to be with you, spend time with you.
Send me your Venmo so I can.
Let's go to Westville this week.
Lunch on me and
all
dessert.
Right, done.
Yeah.
Then we'll go to Jane's life-changing cookie shop.
That is good.
And what's coming up for you, Johnny?
A couple of things. As we all know, we've mentioned a bunch of shows. The New England Narrator Retreat, October 13th to 16th. Just so you guys know, I'm mentioning it in Facebook and put it out there because we have cabins on site that we didn't have, 4 cabins, and we've used 3 of them to house 12 people. So that leaves some spaces available on site that normally wouldn't be there by now. So if you want to come, you want to be on site, we have some double rooms available. We can help you find a roommate, but I'll
be there.
Okay, yeah, all 3 of us will be there, and it's a great time. And more immediately, August 16th, I think I'll open up registration probably tomorrow on my site because Lisa Ware just put together a new site for me, so I'm going to put it out there with this. Philadelphia, one-day workshop Saturday, August 16th. Paul Rubin and I will be in Philly at the Hilton Garden Inn, which is right next to the Reading Market, so it's easy to get to, easy to find. If you're coming from out of town, we'll have a room deal for you if you need one. If you're in the Philly area, which is all of us, we'll be there August 16th, Philadelphia. It'll be on my site. The site used to be Johnny Heller. Right now, it's mrjohnnyheller.com. The 2 sites will merge eventually, but right now they both exist, and the icky one's got to go. So
So you have a new Mr. Johnny Heller.
It's Mr. Johnny. Let me make sure I don't screw up. I'll do it real fast myself.
I'm gonna put it in the chat and see if I
Mr.
Right.
Johnny, no period. Mr. Johnny Heller. That's the new site right now.
Is that going to be the official one when they merge? Is it going to be MR?
The Johnny Heller. If you go to johnnyheller.com, it'll be the same thing. Whether it's Mr. Johnny Heller or Johnny Heller, it still goes there. But right now, Johnny Heller goes to the old site, which has just become is bogged down, and it doesn't go anywhere. It's pain in the butt. So the new site, simpler, easier. Lisa Ware, who I just love, put it together for me. So that's coming. So Philadelphia, August 16th, one-day workshop. We'll get you lunch, and Paul Rubin and I will be there. It's been We've done them in New York, and now we're going to take a trip to Philly because
Are
we like Philly.
the Phillies in town? You gonna go see some baseball when you
I
guys are
didn't even
done?
look. You know, I don't think Joanna wants to, so no.
That's
Whatever
fair.
Joanna wants, because I'm
That's
already
fair.
dragging her to Philly. Huh?
That's fair.
Yeah, but it's only and, you know, if you live in if you're in the New York area and haven't been to Philly, it's a quick trip, and Philly is, you know, it's a cool town. It's really cool. There's a lot of cool stuff.
And find a cheesesteak place. There's a
Oh,
million of them.
I mean, you know, they got all the Ben Franklin stuff. It's just so much history. It's just if it's just, and before we forget all our history and change it all and put up statues to people we don't like, you should go to Philly and see the actual founding fathers and some of the truths we hold to be self-evident.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Cool, cool,
Okay.
cool.
And Don,
And I have my new app that is now working on my server, and all we got to do is put in the security stuff here. And so we're officially done, but I'm gonna show this off for anyone that's still hanging around. And I'm gonna open the window here, and I have this app because people who are doing books on ACX, they kind of have to check. And I'm gonna drop in a set of files here, and when I drop them, what just happened was you can see that all those files, I just dropped in a set of files, and the app is designed that when you just click a button here, it's going through, and the dog here is checking your stuff. And
Nice touch.
oh, this window, I gotta see if I can scroll this window because it's not showing you the bottom here. It will go through and it will upload them all, it'll check them, and it'll be done. So you'll end up just seeing the results. And just before this, I stopped the server. But what'll happen, you'll get all the results, and you get it in a nice form, and it just shows up.
and the results tell you what, Don?
Whether you passed or failed all the ACX related
Oh,
things. And so,
What a nice
does it tell
luxury,
you how to
man.
fix it to make it
well,
passable?
it actually gives you little messages. If for all the stuff, if like one of the classic things is somebody doesn't realize that either they had a breath before they started, and so their beginning starts off with a breath, and they don't really notice that if they're newer. And but that breath is over the volume specs that you need. You have to have some blank space up front, just a half second,
Yeah.
quarter second, a little bit. And if you don't have it, this thing will tell you, hey, you know, you need to have that running. You need to have that. It's too loud at the beginning. It's not. You miss the RMS. You miss the stuff. It gives you some good answers, and it does it easily, and you just can open it up on your desktop. So
Fantastic.
So the beta will start within the next couple days. I think it might even start later today, and I'll have some information about that. If you're on Facebook, that's where it'll start for the betas, and then beyond that, it'll be available to lots of people.
That's
Okay?
great. Well, thanks again, Brad, for being with us, being our guest. Those of you out there in the audience, if you'd like to be a guest on our show, let us know. Please, if you enjoy the show, share the word. Make some comments. Comments do better than just likes. Let people know, and there you have it. Don, anything else?
That's it. We look forward
All
to
right.
seeing you next week. I don't remember who the guest is, but we'll have some information out there. So thank you for
Thank you,
joining
guys.
us.
This was a
Be
lot
sure
of
to like,
fun.
subscribe, and we'll see you on the wires. Have a great one.
Hi, all.
Appreciate you
Bye-bye.
guys.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Brad. I'll call you.